At dinner, my mom leaned across the table, her eyes sharp and unblinking, and snarled, "Your success means nothing. Anna's the only daughter who matters." My fork froze midair. For years, I had learned to swallow the bitterness, to nod politely while they worshipped Anna for the tiniest scraps of achievement. But something inside me snapped that night. I set my fork down, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "Then watch me cut you out forever." The silence that followed was deafening. My dad stared at his plate like the words weren't meant for him. Anna smirked, basking in the glow of being their golden girl. They thought I'd stay quiet, as always. They thought I'd keep playing the role of the invisible daughter. But what came next? It didn't just shake their perfect image of family, it burned it to the ground. Growing up in my house felt like playing a game where the rules were always rigged against me. From as early as I can remember, Anna was the sun in our family's sky, and I was just a shadow forced to orbit her light. Every little thing she did was treated like a miracle, while my accomplishments slipped through their fingers like they didn't even exist. When I was 9, I won the spelling bee at school. I came home glowing, holding my tiny plastic trophy like it was gold. My dad barely looked up from his newspaper before saying, "That's nice, sweetheart." That same week, Anna painted a crooked rainbow in art class. My mom framed it, hung it in the living room, and invited the neighbors over to see Anna's gift for creativity. I still remember standing there, staring at that painting, feeling like my win had already evaporated. Birthdays told the same story. Mine were always practical clothes, a size too big, school supplies, a $20 bill tucked into a card with no thought. Anna's birthdays, though? Balloons, cakes with her favorite themes, and expensive gifts she didn't even ask for. I got a used bike at 13. Anna got a brand new laptop at 10. And every time I dared to question it, Mom's answer was the same. "She's special, Sophia. Don't be jealous." Even when I worked harder, it was never enough. I brought home straight A's on my report cards year after year. The response? A distracted, "Good job," before the conversation turned back to Anna's potential. When Anna scraped by with C's, my parents threw her a pizza night to celebrate her effort. It was maddening, like I was being punished for not needing their help. The favoritism wasn't just obvious, it was suffocating. At family dinners, relatives would ask about school or sports, and my parents would beam about Anna's ballet recital or her leadership skills in group projects. I'd sit there, invisible, chewing my food while they bragged about my sister like she was destined for greatness. The worst part? Deep down, I wanted their approval so badly it hurt. I told myself if I just worked harder, if I just achieved more, maybe they'd finally look at me the way they looked at her. But no matter how many medals I won, how many essays I aced, or how many shifts I picked up at my after-school job, I remained the backup daughter, the one they could ignore because I'd figure it out on my own. That's how I grew up, trained to believe that Anna was the star, and I was just lucky to exist in her orbit. But as I got older, I started to realize something dangerous. Being ignored gave me freedom. And freedom meant I could build something bigger, stronger, and more unstoppable than they ever imagined. By the time I was 15, the differences between Anna and me weren't just obvious, they were painful. That was the year I got my first part-time job at a diner down the street, wiping tables and serving coffee for tips. I wanted my own money, because I already knew asking my parents for anything meant hearing, "We're tight on cash this month," followed by Anna walking in with a new pair of designer sneakers. I remember saving for 3 months, just to buy myself a second-hand phone. Every extra shift, every dollar in tips, I tucked it away in an envelope under my mattress. The day I finally bought it, I felt unstoppable. Meanwhile, Anna complained that her phone case didn't match her outfits. 2 days later, Mom took her shopping for the newest iPhone and a dozen accessories. It was the same story when it came to school. I had to apply for scholarships on my own, staying up past midnight to write essays and double-check financial aid forms. Dad's only advice? Don't expect too much help, Sophia. College is expensive. But when Anna decided she wanted to go to a private arts academy with a $40,000 tuition bill, my parents didn't hesitate. They took out a loan, hired someone to help with her application, and told her, "Don't worry, baby, we'll handle it." And they did. They handled everything for her tuition, car, clothes, even gas money. When I turned 16, I scraped together enough from my diner shifts to buy a used Toyota with 180,000 miles on it. I still remember driving it home, proud even though the muffler rattled like it was ready to fall off. A month later, for Anna's sweet 16, they surprised her with a brand new Jeep wrapped in a giant red bow. The photos made it to Facebook. My Toyota? I parked it down the block so I didn't have to hear Anna's friends laugh. The worst part wasn't the gifts, it was how my parents reacted to our choices. When I worked late hours, came home exhausted, and pulled straight A's, they called me independent, like it was a polite way of saying I didn't need their support. When Anna skipped class, changed majors 3 times, or complained about how stressful her life was, they bent over backward to rescue her. Sometimes I wondered if they even realized what they were teaching us. To me, fight for everything, expect nothing, and prove yourself over and over again. To Anna, the world will always catch you, no matter how many times you fall. And maybe, in a twisted way, that imbalance shaped both of us perfectly. Anna learned to depend. I learned to survive. She was their golden child, polished on the outside but hollow within. I was the invisible one, quietly building the grit I'd need to outgrow them all. By the time I was in college, I thought things might finally change. I was on the dean's list every semester, juggling 2 part-time jobs, and still managing to keep my GPA near perfect. Professors praised me, classmates asked me for help with assignments, and I felt like maybe, just maybe, my parents would notice. They didn't. When I called home to share that I'd landed a competitive internship at a respected firm, Mom's response was so casual it stung. "That's nice, Sophia. Did you hear Anna's organizing a fundraiser at her school? Everyone says she's such a natural leader." I stood there holding the phone, wondering how fundraising cupcakes could possibly outshine the hours I'd spent proving myself. Every time I achieved something, the pattern repeated. I brought home awards, certificates, glowing recommendations. My parents would nod, smile faintly, and then immediately pivot back to Anna. When she passed a class she nearly failed, they treated it like she'd won a Nobel Prize. When she painted a mural for a friend's coffee shop, they threw her a family dinner to celebrate her artistic vision. It wasn't just disappointing, it was humiliating. I remember one holiday dinner when relatives asked how I was doing. I started to explain about the internship, about the real projects I was trusted to work on, and Dad cut me off mid-sentence. "But have you seen Anna's designs? She's got a real eye for aesthetics." Everyone turned toward Anna, and I sat there, invisible again, stabbing my fork into cold potatoes. The message was clear. No matter how hard I worked, my success was background noise compared to Anna's theatrics. They didn't want to hear about financial reports or client presentations. They wanted glitter, applause, and a stage where Anna could shine even if it was a performance with no substance. And here's the bitter truth. The more they ignored me, the more determined I became. Each dismissal added fuel to the fire. I stopped chasing their approval and started chasing something bigger. The idea that one day, my success would be so undeniable, so overwhelming, that they couldn't ignore it even if they tried. But at the time, I was still that daughter sitting at the dinner table, watching my parents beam at Anna like she carried the family legacy, while I quietly carried the weight of building my own future. Little did they know, their neglect was sharpening me into something they'd never be ready for. Graduation day was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I had worked myself to the bone, 4 years of sleepless nights, essays polished until dawn, and weekends sacrificed to part-time jobs just to afford books and rent. I'd earned my honors cord, my cap and gown pressed neatly, and I reserved 3 front-row seats for the people I thought mattered most: my mom, my dad, and my sister Anna. I called them the week before, reminded them of the schedule, even sent the parking details. Mom said, "Of course, honey, we wouldn't miss it for the world." I believed her. That morning, as I waited in the staging area, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "Can't make it today, sweetie. Anna's got a meeting with a potential investor. This could be huge for her future. We'll celebrate your graduation later. So proud of both our successful girls. XO." I read it 3 times, my stomach sinking lower with each word. Anna's meeting some coffee shop chat with a wannabe entrepreneur was more important than watching me walk across the stage after years of hard work. When my name was called, I stepped onto that stage and scanned the crowd. Families cheered, waving balloons, holding bouquets, crying tears of pride. And in the 3 empty chairs I'd saved, there was nothing. No clapping, no smiles, no flowers, just empty space. A painful reminder that I was alone. The dean shook my hand and whispered, "Congratulations, Sophia. Outstanding work." I forced a smile for the camera, but inside, I was hollow. I wanted to run off stage, tear off the cap and gown, and scream that none of it mattered if the people you loved refused to care. Afterward, I stood outside with my diploma in hand, watching classmates laugh and hug their families, snapping pictures that would hang in living rooms for years to come. I slipped away quietly, got into my rusty Toyota, and drove home with my diploma on the passenger seat. It looked more like a participation ribbon than the proof of blood, sweat, and tears it really was. That drive home changed me. Somewhere between the empty parking lot and my lonely apartment, I realized I couldn't keep waiting for validation that would never come. My parents had made their choice. Anna was their legacy. I was their afterthought. So I made a choice too. From that day forward, I decided to live for myself, not for them. I would build a future so strong, so undeniable, that when they finally turned around to notice me, it would already be too late. After graduation, I cut contact to the bare minimum. No weekly calls, no dropping by on holidays, no desperate attempts to make them proud. Instead, I poured everything I had into building my own life. At first, it was brutal. I worked 60, sometimes 70 hours a week days at my entry-level job, nights spent studying business, finance, and real estate on my own. My apartment was so bare it looked temporary. A mattress on the floor, a folding chair for a desk, and a second-hand laptop that overheated if I opened more than 2 tabs. Dinner was often ramen or peanut butter sandwiches. While Anna was sipping lattes and posting photos from rooftop bars, I was hunched over spreadsheets, teaching myself market trends until 2 in the morning. My first big risk came 6 months later, a rundown duplex on the edge of town. I scraped together every cent I'd saved, 0 cash, and took out a high-interest loan for the rest. The place was a disaster. Peeling paint, broken plumbing, and an electrical system that looked older than me. Contractors quoted repairs that I couldn't afford, so I learned to do most of it myself. Weekends were spent with YouTube tutorials playing in the background while I patched drywall, laid flooring, and figured out how to replace a toilet without flooding the bathroom. My hands were blistered, my back ached, and sometimes I cried out of sheer exhaustion, but every nail hammered into place felt like I was rebuilding more than a house. I was rebuilding myself. It wasn't smooth. My first tenants stopped paying rent after 4 months, and by the time I finally got them out, the unit looked like a hurricane had torn through it. I lost thousands fixing the damage, but I also learned lessons no classroom could have taught me: how to screen people, how to manage property, how to survive setbacks without folding. By the end of that year, the duplex was finally stable. For the first time, I had passive income, only a few $100s a month, but it was mine, proof that my sacrifice was turning into something real. I reinvested every penny. No vacations, no shopping sprees, just discipline and focus. Meanwhile, my family barely noticed. On the rare occasions I visited, the conversation always circled back to Anna, her art shows, her networking events, her brilliant ideas. When I mentioned buying a property, Mom's response was dismissive. "That's nice, Sophia. Did you hear Anna's thinking about starting a design studio?" I stopped expecting applause. I didn't need it anymore. Every sleepless night, every scraped knuckle, every dollar reinvested became my own private victory. I wasn't building for them, I was building in spite of them. And while they clung to the illusion of Anna's golden future, I was laying bricks for a reality that would one day leave them stunned and scrambling to catch up. By the time I turned 26, I had 3 rental properties under my name. They weren't glamorous, but they were steady, each one bringing in positive cash flow that grew my savings month by month. I'd learned to refinance smartly, to negotiate with contractors, and to spot opportunities before anyone else noticed. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. But at home? None of it mattered. During one rare family dinner, I mentioned casually, "I've added a third property this year. It's fully rented already." Dad glanced up from his plate for 2 seconds, muttered, "Just make sure you're not in over your head, Sophia. Real estate can be risky," and then pivoted to his favorite subject, Anna's latest project. Apparently, she was designing logos for a friend's boutique. The way they carried on, you'd think she had landed a Fortune 500 contract. I wanted to laugh, but instead I chewed in silence. When I got a promotion at work that doubled my salary, Mom's only response was, "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Anna's art got featured in a local blog?" The blog in question was one of those websites where anyone could pay $50 to post their own feature. They treated it like she'd been profiled by the New York Times. The favoritism wasn't just insulting, it was absurd. Every holiday, Anna's gifts grew more elaborate. One Christmas, she unwrapped a brand new MacBook, while I got a generic gift card. When I unwrapped it, Mom smiled brightly and said, "We just knew you'd find something practical with this." I forced a thank you, but inside, I burned. Meanwhile, Anna's career was spiraling. She'd started and abandoned 3 different ventures in as many years: a clothing line, a photography studio, and something she called creative consulting, which was basically her charging small businesses for ideas she never followed through on. Each failure was excused with the same refrain: "She just needs more time. She's discovering her passion." I didn't argue anymore. I'd stopped expecting them to see me. But privately, I kept growing. By living cheap, still driving my beat-up Toyota, still eating peanut butter sandwiches, I was investing everything into expanding. By 27, I owned 6 units, and was netting more in rental income than my full-time salary. I wasn't just building wealth, I was building freedom. And yet, at every gathering, I sat through endless monologues about Anna's potential. They called her the family's future. Me? I was background noise. What they didn't know, and what made me smile in the dark, quiet moments alone, was that their golden daughter's shine was already fading. And when the real storm came, all their blind devotion wouldn't save her. The shift didn't happen overnight. It started with small cracks in the image my parents had built around Anna. First, her design studio quietly shut down when she couldn't pay the rent. Then the shiny Jeep she drove everywhere disappeared from the driveway repossessed. At family dinners, the conversations about Anna's big plans became shorter, thinner, and harder to sustain. I didn't say anything. I just listened, nodding politely, hiding the fact that by now I'd accumulated 9 properties and was closing in on a net worth they couldn't even imagine. The breaking point came the day a local business journal published an article about rising stars in real estate. My face was on the cover, smiling in front of one of my renovated houses, the headline bold: "Sophia Mitchell, 28, builds $1 million portfolio, before 30. I hadn't told my family, but someone else did. Within 48 hours, my phone lit up like fireworks. First Dad: "Sophia, we saw the article. Can we talk? So proud of you." Then Anna: "Wow, didn't know you were doing all that. Maybe we could collaborate your properties? My creative vision?" Finally Mom: "Honey, this is amazing. We should celebrate as a family. Call me ASAP." Funny. For years, they'd dismissed me. Now suddenly, I was the miracle child. I ignored them for weeks, letting their desperation stew. But when I finally agreed to meet for dinner, the truth spilled out fast. They weren't there to celebrate me, they were drowning. Dad's business had collapsed under debt. Mom's spending habits had spiraled out of control, credit cards maxed, loans unpaid. And Anna? She hadn't worked in months, still living at home, draining what little money they had left. At first, they tried the proud parent routine. "We always knew you'd be successful, Sophia," Mom cooed. Her smile stretched too wide. Dad chimed in: "Your mother's right. We couldn't be prouder." Then, as if on cue, Anna slid her laptop across the table with a PowerPoint she clearly threw together in a panic. I have this idea, she said. If we combine your business with my creative brand, we can dominate the market. You handle the money, I'll handle the image. I nearly laughed out loud, but the mask slipped soon after. Dad's voice cracked when he admitted, "We're in serious trouble. The bank sent us a foreclosure notice. We need 160 to save the house. Sophia, you're our only hope." Mom reached for my hand, her eyes glossy with crocodile tears. "Please, sweetheart. We made mistakes, but family sticks together. You wouldn't let us lose everything, would you?" Anna leaned in, her smirk replaced with raw panic. "Sophia, if you help us, I'll work for you for free. I'll prove I can pull my weight." I sat back, my heart pounding but not with pity. With clarity. For the first time, they needed me more than I ever needed them. And I knew exactly how I'd answer. I looked at the three of them across the dinner table, my parents pale with fear, Anna wringing her hands like a child about to be scolded. For a moment, I almost let the old version of me speak up, the daughter who longed for approval, who would have sacrificed herself for a shred of recognition. But that girl was gone. I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. "Do you remember my graduation?" I asked. "When I saved you front row seats, and you skipped it because Anna had a coffee meeting with some investor? Do you remember telling me that my success meant nothing? That Anna was the only daughter who mattered?" The color drained from Mom's face. Dad stared at the table. Anna whispered, "That was different." "No," I cut in. "It wasn't different. You made your choice years ago. You invested in her, and now your investment has failed." Silence. Just the clink of silverware as a waiter refilled our water glasses, completely oblivious to the storm brewing at our table. Mom tried again, her voice trembling. "We'll pay you back with interest. We'll sign over the house. Anna will work for you. Anything, please, Sophia. Don't let us lose everything." But I was done bargaining with ghosts. The time to support me was when I was building all of this from nothing. You laughed. You ignored me. Now you want in? That ship has sailed, and it's not coming back. I stood, tossed a few bills onto the table for my meal, and walked out, leaving them frozen in disbelief. Weeks later, I drove past their old house. A bright yellow foreclosure sticker was plastered on the door. The yard, once manicured, was overgrown. Out front, Anna was hauling boxes into Dad's beat-up truck. The Jeep was long gone, repossessed. My parents shuffled around like ghosts, faces drawn with exhaustion. For the first time in my life, they looked small. Meanwhile, I was moving into my new home, a 900 modern house, with glass walls overlooking the city, a pool in the backyard, and enough space to breathe freely. My office overlooked the skyline, where I managed my growing portfolio. In the garage sat a sleek black Porsche I bought with cash, a reward to myself for every night of struggle they never saw. Sometimes, emails from Mom slip into my inbox from new accounts. Pages of apologies, promises to change, pleas for one last chance. I don't reply. Dad even showed up at my office once, looking thinner, older, broken. Security escorted him out before he made it to my desk. And Anna? She's working part-time at a craft store, making minimum wage, posting inspirational quotes about finding yourself on Instagram. I don't smile out of cruelty, I smile out of freedom. They chose to build their world around a golden girl. They let me become invisible. And now, I've built a world where their absence doesn't matter. They always said my success meant nothing. Turns out it means everything because it's the one thing they can never take from me.